Hey Ben, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Mitch. You all right?
Yeah, good, thank you. Just want to
Good,
start off
good,
with
good. Nice backdrop you've got there.
yeah, no, it's a favorite album, that one.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely killer. I've been playing it all week and just getting psyched for this.
Yeah, we are too. It's an exciting time for us. New album on the way, and a trip back to Australia and New Zealand for the first time, Japan as well. So it's a lot to look forward to.
Well, that's it. It's been so. I just also want to apologize because I missed you last week. We had a storm in my city that knocked out power everywhere. So I was stoked at having another chance for
Okay.
this.
Yeah, no worries. I gave it 5 minutes and no one came, so I kind of gave up. But when
Yeah.
I mentioned it, Dicey said he'd reschedule it, and all good.
I was greatly appreciated. I was just shattered. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you just said, it's been a fair while, 10 years since we hear you in Australia for Soundwave. Do you have any
Yeah.
memories or, uh, yeah, any memories from back then?
Well, because it was you know, an amazing experience getting to play venues the size we did, like Olympic Stadium in Sydney, and where was the big race course one? And I think that was Adelaide or something, and there was one at the prison, the site of the prison in maybe Brisbane, I think it was, but it was, we got treated really well. We were shuttled around. We getting on flights to fly to each city every day, and I'd be walking down the aisle of the plane going, like, there's Tom Araya from Slayer there and Scott Ian from Anthrax there, and you think to yourself, what the hell's going on? But the shows were really good. I remember the first one in Perth. No, first one was Brisbane, and we went on around midday on an outdoor stage, and the sun was belting down, and it must have been about 40 degrees, and I was like, this is no weather for an Englishman. But the crowd were really responsive, and everything went really well. And all the shows were brilliant to us. And we did a couple of side shows with Red Fang and Caius Lives, which
Yeah.
which were really well attended. And you know, as good as that experience was, we never got the opportunity to do any Orange Goblin headline shows, which is something that we've always wanted to do since that. And since that Soundwave tour, we've toured the US with Down and an Australian band called King Parrot, and we became really good friends with Youngie and the guys in King Parrot, and they kept saying to us, "You need to come back and do your own headline show." So yeah, luckily it's materialised now, and we can't wait.
Yeah, definitely. And, those King Parrot boys are wild. They're always good fun.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first show of that Down tour was San Antonio, Texas, and Phil had been sort of telling us, like, wait till you see these guys live. And obviously we'd seen the videos, like Shit on the Liver and stuff like that, and we knew we was in for an explosive mix of punk and grindcore and death metal and God knows what else. And as soon as they started, within about 5 seconds, Youngie was off the stage, running around the venue, with pulling people in with mic stands, spitting at people, and
Yeah.
it was just madness. And yeah, got a lot of time for those chaps.
No, they're good. Like, yeah, Young is one of the most intense frontmen I've ever seen. They've been coming to my town for over a decade or so, but always a good
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
It's nearly 30 years for Orange Goblin, as a sort of career. So how do you feel on that? Like, what's been some highlights for your music career?
30 years. You don't even get that for murder. Uh,
You'd be out
it's
by
it, you know, it's half my life. Yeah. And but as I say in these interviews, that I've no regrets at all. It's been an absolute dream come true, really. As young men, we were sat around bored one day listening to all our favorite bands, and said, why don't we have a go at doing this ourselves? Let's put a band together. We knew Pete could play the guitar a bit. We knew Joe could play the guitar. Martin had never picked up a bass before, and I'd never sung. But we gave it a shot, and we didn't expect anything to come of it. We just thought it'd be a good laugh, a few mates jamming together in a room. And, it just sort of snowballed. We did a demo. It got into the right hands. So we ended up doing some shows around London as Our Haunted Kingdom. and got to support the likes of Electric Wizard and Cathedral. And then it started to get serious because people were really into it. And Lee Dorian picked us up, signed us to Rise Above Records, and before we knew it, we had an album in the shops. And Cathedral were dragging us on tour around Europe, and then all of a sudden we were in the US, and we was traveling all over the world, doing Japan, and then eventually back down to Australia. It's just been a wild ride, you know, and you can't sort of complain about having the opportunity to see the world, traveling around with your best mates and making the music you want to play. You meet some amazing people along the way. You experience new cultures, different foods, and things like that. It's been great, and you know, I think we were a little bit naive in the early days because we got sort of caught up in the whole stoner rock explosion, and we didn't really know the music industry and how it worked, and we've had to pick that up along as we go. And it's I still feel fortunate that we've done everything we've done. We're really grateful to the people that believed in us and the people that guided us, and mainly the fans that have supported us and bought the records, bought the t-shirts, bought the tickets to the shows. And as long as we can, you know, feel that we're giving them something and we're enjoying it ourselves, we'll continue to do it.
Yeah, of course. Do you have an album that you're most proud of in writing, or you know, was there any thought sort of, yeah, an album writing session that stuck out?
I think, you know, I'm proud of everything we've done because I think each album you can see as a kind of milestone of where we were at along our career path. I mean, if you listen to Frequencies from Planet 10, it is the sound of five young, as was obviously Pete was in the band, there's five 19, 20-year-old guys going into the studio for the first time, and it was like, what does this button do? And what does that do? And we were just having the album that kind of elevated us to the next level, definitely in the UK and Europe, was Eulogy for the Damned.
Yeah.
I mean, that came sort of, I think it was 5 years after Healing Through Fire, and Healing Through Fire had really good reception, but because we hadn't really done a great deal in those years, we had toured and done festivals here and there. By the time Eulogy, when we shifted from being these new guys in the scene to being old experienced heads, and we were really well respected, because you know, in the early days we did cop a bit of flack for what we did, and we weren't considered to be professional, and that goes back to us being naive. But by the time we got to Eulogy for the Damned, I think the media mainly had sort of picked up on the fact that these guys were around to stay. And yeah, we kind of started getting respected, and we saw an elevation in our profile. The fees increased, the billing at festivals improved, and things like that. So, you know, there's a lot of strong material on that album, and I think it was a definite shift in the maturity of the band.
Yeah,
not just in the songwriting, but in the production and everything as well. But you know, like I say, there's not a weak album in the bunch, I don't think, and each one has something different. And you know, the core of Orange Goblin sound, you can say there's the influence of Black Sabbath and Motorhead, and that's always going to be there. That's the sort of reason we do what we do. And you know, I'm really proud of the record we've just finished doing now, which you'll get to hear come the summer, and we'll be playing a couple of songs off that when we get down there.
Keen as hell to hear it. On that topic, how did the writing for this new album come about? Do you have a sort of genuine process you usually follow, or just sort of off the cuff sort of stuff?
The Orange Goblin process is normally sit around twiddling our thumbs for 4 years, then book a date in the studio and panic and write it all at the last minute.
Yeah, cool.
Which was no different, you know. Been 6 albums since the Wolf, 6 years since the Wolf Bites Back.
Yeah.
And it's not as if we haven't had time to do it. There's been a global pandemic, everything shut down for a year and a half. So, you know, we didn't have any excuses, but we didn't write anything. And we signed this new deal with Peaceville Records, and obviously Martin left the band and Harry joined on bass. So there were things going on which kind of got in the way, but around January last year, we said, right, we need to do this. So as I say, we booked a date in the studio. We spoke to a few different producers, decided to work with Mike Exeter, who was fantastic to work with. Obviously, we had a lot of respect for Mike for what he's done in his career. He worked alongside Rick Rubin doing the last Black Sabbath album. He produced Heaven and Hell. He's produced Dio. He's Tony Iommi's sort of go-to guy.
Yeah.
And we knew he would understand exactly what it was we wanted. And yeah, we don't rehearse that often because we're all spread out around the UK. But last summer we was pretty much, you know, at least once a week in the studio. And then in October we went down to Brighton for a few days to do all the pre-production. And Mike came and sat in there and sort of said, well, maybe if we switch this there and move this about, and it all fell into place. And we went into this record pretty much better prepared than we've ever been, I think.
Well, there you go.
Recording an album, I think the production is you know, another step forward, and you'll hear that when it comes out. Mike's done a fantastic job. There's those Black Sabbath and Motorhead elements are still there, but you know, I think you can tell we're a little bit older, a little bit wiser. There's a bit of almost a progressive influence. I think Joe's been listening to a lot of Beatles and King Crimson and Rush and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
And it's a really complete album. It's got a real dystopian science fiction theme to it, and the artwork's great. I'm excited. I'm excited for people to hear it.
I'm keen from just hearing you talk about it. I was keen beforehand, but even more now. But what helps inspire you to write? Do you have, like, you know, is it bands or books, you know, events?
For me, lyrically, form of escape, and I take a lot of my influence from, you know, mainly I like to read sort of Lovecraft and Ray Bradbury and Philip K. Dick and Edgar Allan Poe, stuff like this, and that's always been the case. And you know, it could be movies I'm watching. Hence, we've always had sort of strong influence by horror movies. Hence, songs like The Fog and, you know, Shadow over Innsmouth and things like that. And that's still there as well. And this time, you know, my favorite lyricists are people like Geezer Butler, Roger Waters. I like Dave Windor from Monster Magnet. I think he's a great lyricist. Lemmy, Neil Fallon from Clutch, because he's a great storyteller. And this time, you know, there's a lot has happened in the world over the last 6 years. So I wanted to kind of bring some of that into the conspiracy theories around COVID and things like that, and just have a play on it, be a bit lighthearted with it. It's, you know, I'm not out to offend anybody, just have a bit of fun. And I think that's what good lyrics should be. I think albums should give people a release from their 9-to-5 day jobs and let them escape to another world for 50 minutes to an hour or whatever it is. So, you know, that's what we've tried to do. You know, in the past, we might have been a bit more involved in sort of the whole fantasy world, and obviously Tolkien was a big influence on us in the early days. But yeah, it's nice to have a mishmash of everything.
Yeah, definitely. Keen as hell, and I could talk Lovecraft all night long. Massive fan.
Yeah, I mean, the man was years ahead of his time, and not just in that gothic horror world, but the worlds he created within that whole dystopian science fiction thing, the older gods and
the lore behind it's incredible.
Mythos. So yeah, and I don't think it's just us. Obviously, you know, heavy metal in general owes a huge debt to people like Lovecraft, because he's been such a big influence on a lot of our favorite artists.
Well, that's exactly right. But I also understand you're a bit of a black metal fan. Is there anyone that takes you, anyone that sort of takes your fancy at the moment, or any recommendations you could make?
You know, I don't listen to it so much these days. I mean, I grew up listening to the likes of Dark Throne and Venom and Bathory and Mayhem, like sort of in the 90s, and these days it's not too. I mean, I still think Watain are sort of head and shoulders above a lot of bands in that world.
Incredible.
And you know, as I've got older, I don't really listen to a great deal of music that's made after 1986, to be honest. But you know, there's a UK band here called Devastator. They're doing sort of black and thrash that's really good. within our sort of scene, there's obviously Green Lung that I've got a lot of respect for, and kind of mixing Sabbath and Queen and Deep Purple, and they're coming on leaps and bounds in Europe, and they've just been out supporting Clutch and are doing sort of huge headline shows now, and it's great to see that from a young English band who are nice guys as well. We played festivals in the past and sort of hung out with them, and we can see that they're coming from the right place and have got their heads screwed on, and yeah, all power to them.
Yeah, no, that's right. And you also run your own booking agency as well.
I do, yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you have any sort of advice for upcoming bands or bands that are wanting to start out? Like, what would be just one bit of advice?
Be prepared to put the hard yards in, I think. You know, a lot of bands these days have it too easy, and they sort of put an album together in their bedrooms on GarageBand and then throw it up on a Bandcamp and then expect the world. You know, we came out in the mid-90s when we still had to trade tapes and send letters and write to people and go to gigs to hand out flyers and things like that and do things the old way. But that gave us character and it made us who we are. And we forged a lot of friendships in those early days that have stood to today and have helped us throughout our career. And yeah, I get a lot of EPKs and demos sent from bands that just seem to think it's going to happen just like that because they've sent me a record, and you get these young kids are saying, you know, we want this, we need this much money per show, we want hotel accommodation. I'm like, jump in the fucking van and sleep on the gear like we had to. You know, we had 5 of us huddled under one blanket, sleeping on the amps and things like that in the back of a broken down van at the side of the motorway. So, you know, it's rock and roll isn't easy, and it's like Bon Scott saying, it's a long way to the top.
Well, that's it. And yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. And so just one last question before I let you get on with your evening. Who do you think would win out of a badger from the UK and an Aussie kangaroo?
The kangaroo. I've seen some of them kangaroos. They're built like a brick shithouse.
Well, like, you know, it'd be interesting as hell. I've seen those badgers. They look, you know, bigger than wombats over here. But thank you.
No contest.
Thank you very much for the interview today, Ben. It's greatly appreciated and keen to catch you when you come across to Australia.
Awesome. It's my pleasure, Mitch. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Cheers. Bye-bye.